Hey guys, we're back. We're going to be doing another ProSport gauge install video here. So this is pretty much the last one I'll be adding to this car here. This is the ProSport Digital Series intake air sensor gauge. Basically what this does is, this is the dual sensor. You can buy a single sensor, but this sensor here measures intake air temps. So on like a boosted application, you'll want to know the intake air temp that's coming after the intercooler. So say if you have a turbo system and you have a front mounted air-to-air intercooler, you could also with this dual record the air coming in and the air coming out. Basically intake air temperature is a very good measure of how much power it's making, because once you start heat soaking and your intake air temperature goes up, your car will pull timing, and it just makes it not great. With the Mustang here, I've went pretty far to make my intake air temps very efficient. I got the super single heat exchanger from Department of Boost manifold, which just has a massive core in it. 1-inch lines. I got this DEI aluminum heat shield because the headers are right off there. And yeah, 1-inch lines, the Davies Craig EWP 150 pump. So I'm doing a lot to try to make the intake temps as good as possible. And I can just look on my SCT tuner, you know, watch it that way, but I prefer just having a gauge up there that I can always just quickly reference to. So this one, it might be kind of hard to see on camera, but it has in and out temperature gauges. Normally for like a, like I said, a turbo setup, you would just drill into your charge pipes and mount them. The Department of Boost manifold has extra ports on here that you can add stuff to, like this. So in this case, we have one temperature sensor in here. So this will actually measure the temperature from the manifold. So after the intercooler, that's a temperature that it's really crucial to monitor your actual intake air temperature sensor. I have mine right here. Same port basically that runs to the ECU. This one will just be going to our gauge. And then on top of that, I'm planning on running my extra one just right into the intake here. I don't really want it to obstruct any airflow. I don't think it really will, but I'll probably drill a hole, maybe even this one right here, because this is a port that's not being used, and just have it right in there, maybe close to the MAF. This is silicone right here, so maybe right into it. But for this video, I'm just going to be running the single one first. As you can see here, the instructions, you basically just need to get, for the gauge itself inside the car, 12-volt power and engine ground. And I already ran those wires when I did the previous install video for the boost gauge. And then from the sensor here, so say, you know, one of these, the in temp and the out temp, they have a green and black and a blue and black wire that just needs to be wired into this. Right at the bottom, there's green, black, blue, black. Those correspond to whichever, you know, in or out you're going to use. So this blue wire with the black wire right next to it, that's going to be our out temp, which is what we're going to run for today. So guys, basically the process is if you have a turbo setup, you want to put it you know, wherever you want your sensor, before or after the intercooler. Usually you want it after. Supercharger, if you have a port on your manifold, that's where you'll want to place it. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started on this. I'm just going to run 2 wires from this into the cabin, and then the power from a fuse tap, which will look like this. I have a couple fuse taps inside my engine bay here. You can use a fuse tap from inside your footwell. There's usually a fuse panel there. You just use a fuse tap to splice in. And then a ground, and that should do it. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So I'm going to start running wires from there. I'll probably wrap it around the manifold and then down, remove my tire here. And then in the tire well here, there is a grommet that leads into the cabin. And then from the cabin, I'll go ahead and remove my gauge pod pillar here, place in the last slot there, and then run wires down to the fuse panel. It's kind of a mess down here at the moment, so don't disregard that, but fuse panel's behind that computer there, and we'll get going on that. Before we continue, I just wanted to mention we have a bunch of ProSport gauge install videos. We have got oil pressure gauge installs, wideband O2, boost gauge installs, and then we're going to be doing another one with a transmission temperature gauge install. So check those out on our channel. You know, check the description for those, and we'd appreciate if you guys subscribed. All right, guys, so I got basically measured out how long the wire will need to be. I'm going to route it down along these lines right here, over there and under the intake, and then into the footwell there, or the wheel well. I replaced the stock connectors that were on here with just my own. These were better in my opinion. I'm just gonna heat shrink them, should be good. So you also want to remember which one is the white wire. So the white wire comes out to here. I'm at the end of this line, I'm just going to wrap a piece of tape on it so I know which one is what. This white wire off the sensor goes into the blue wire on the harness here. So, and then once you do the other one as well, you'll want to mark the white one for the green line. I'm going to go ahead and start routing this around down into the tire well or wheel well, and then in through that grommet to the cabin. Alright guys, as you can see, the wire ran up just along the other wires I have in here. Unfortunately, all the fasteners I had on there broke when I took the fender liner out, so I'm just going to put some new ones in. I'm going to go ahead and put this all back together, put the tire on, and lower it, and we can go ahead and start working on the inside. Alright guys, here is the two wires that I routed in here. I put that little heat shield over the white line, so we know which one that is. That goes to the blue line on the harness, and this other line just goes to the black line. So I have the gauge here, and I've kind of just separated these lines. So these ones we don't need to worry about. The orange is just for dimming, and then the green and black are for that in temperature, so we don't really need that. And then we have red and black for the power and ground for the gauge, and then blue and black for the actual sensor. So I've already got these butt connectors on there, so I'm going to go ahead and affix it inside the gauge pod holder, and then run these lines up to it, and then run one ground line. And then when I did the last install, I already ran this for power. So this will go in the fuse tap area, and I'll show you where that is. Alright guys, it's going to look like a little bit of a rat's nest. Down here is the fuse panel on the interior. The one that I set up for this, let me see if I can do it with one hand, is that one right there. So this is a fuse tap. Basically, you can insert your fuses, and then find ignition power. So basically the gauges will only get power when the key is turned on. So got that ran. Basically that just goes in between the center console over to that area there. Now we just need to wire power into the red line off the gauge, and then from the black wire to a ground. So I'm just going to reuse one of the grounds down there. Alright guys, so I got the gauge in, got it all put back together, all wired up, and we're going to go ahead and give it a test start. I would recommend, before giving it a test start, don't put everything back together like I did. That was kind of a mistake on my end, so see how it goes here, but I'm pretty sure it should work. Yeah, there it is. Does its startup sequence. That bottom one there, that's the out, intercooler out temperature reading. So right from the manifold, right off the intercooler core. So it's saying 86 degrees. The top one's flashing just because I haven't wired that up, but that'll just be two wires from where I place it in the intake. So I'm gonna turn off this the car here so I don't kill the battery. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up around here, and then we'll finish it off. Alright guys, so it's reading. Just turned the car on just to explain a couple things, why it's important to know your intake air temps. Mainly, like I said at the beginning, it's about, it's almost like a horsepower rating. Like the higher the number is, the worse your car is going to perform. It's going to cut timing, and really it just shows you, you know, how efficient your system is. See, you can take a look at your weather. So it's 72 here and 86, so that's just 16 degrees above ambient, and the car is running. It's not up to operating temp, you'll see it, but Also, as you can see how well your system is set up once you start driving, because once you get more airflow through the heat exchanger, this can go up and down. So this will be a good way just to see, easy to reference. I could use my SCT tuner to, you know, just read from the OBD2, but I like just something that's very quick reference. So very cool that they make a gauge like this, and I like the dual intake because I'll definitely wire in the sensor for the intake, the actual intake there, just to see the difference between the air it brings in and then once it gets into the engine. Should also show this. So this is the sensor here. I got this wire loom all wrapped around it, so it should protect against any type of heat, and then down right to the wheel well there. All right guys, that's gonna do it. We got the intake air temperature sensor all ran in. Definitely gonna run the second probe to inside the intake here, but that'll be for another day. It was a pretty quick install, all things considered, and very easy. ProSport always makes great gauges. Keep an eye out. We're going to be doing a install on Vince's Trans Am. We're going to be doing an oil pressure gauge and oil temperature gauge. I've already done a video on our oil pressure gauge, so check that out. The oil temperature gauge will be pretty cool to see. All right guys, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment down below. We'll see you in the next video.